Well, hey, good morning, everybody. This is Selwyn Robbins. Glad to be back with y'all. It's always a pleasure. Hope everyone is enjoying their Friday going into this weekend. I know I have already, just running a few errands, but I just wanted to jump on here real quick this morning and just put context to a post I put on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. And that post was simply a quote, and it is growth cuts different ways. And the context I want to put to it is basically how I came about it. And the reason I made the post in the first place is that I wanted to get it out of mind and onto paper so that I could come back to it. So here we are today, and I hope you enjoy it. And by all means, at the end of this, please put a comment on there, any insight that you've received regarding this subject and how you can help others just as well, because though I'm speaking this from my perspective, I do want it to help you. So by all means, that helps me go a little bit further just as well in what I'm trying to do. So in this, growth cuts different ways. And how this came about is that I was in the yard a few weeks ago cutting. This was the front yard. And I truly enjoy being out in the yard, getting it clean, very presentable at all times. It doesn't always happen, but when I do, I make it on point, right? So anyway, I'm out there cutting, and as anybody that is in the yard, you're going back and forth, up and down, diagonal, whichever way it is. And as I'm doing so, I'm looking at the grass, and that thought, growth cuts different ways, came to me. So I'm like, okay, hold on, let me stop, let me write this down and just put a post on it so I could come back. And as I continue cutting and reflecting on that statement, I realized that as I'm cutting in, you'll probably be able to hold on to this, is that when you look back on the first cut, sometimes you don't get all of the grass. Matter of fact, there were a few pieces that were sticking up in that same line. So I had to turn back around and go back down that same path and get what I didn't in the first go round. And so in that, I kept that in mind, and I would do that so often as I saw something that I missed. And I want to bring this question to you. As you have navigated life as a husband, as a wife, as a leader in any type of role, have you seen where you have made missteps? And as you've seen them, have you made the necessary changes so that you don't have to do it again? And or where this can happen, so you make those adjustments as necessary, so that you can move a little bit further. And I think as anybody that's wanting to grow, we always take the time to sit down and reflect on, how did the day go? Those meetings that I attended, actually, could they have been a little bit more informative or less informative as need be? As you're spending time with your spouse or your children, is there more that you could have said or done so that that time is more memorable and engaging? And this is all about growth, but growth cuts different ways, right? Meaning, in your lens, how are you growing? As I was thinking about this earlier today, I was reminded of a conversation I had with a coworker some years ago. It was this lady, and I'm just walking the building, and God had me looking in her direction, and He said, "She's a coach." So I went over to her and I said, I didn't even know the lady. I said, "Are you a coach?" And she kind of stood back, a little taken aback, and she said, "Yes, I am." And I can't remember how I said it, but basically I was saying, "What are you doing here?" And it wasn't questioning in a demeaning way, because as any employee, you're working so you could pay the bills. But it was more so questioning, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And she proceeded to tell me that she used to be a corporate coach. And I can't remember if she stated what happened or whatnot, but she'd been wanting to get back to it. And I kid you not, that I probably within a week after that conversation, I had never seen that lady again. And I pray that she's definitely back in her role, something that she really wanted to be a part of. And as I'm thinking about that, there was a conversation. In that conversation, she told me something, and this is about growth. She said the person that was leading her she had one of the hardest conversations with that gentleman. And what it was, he told her exactly how it was going to be from the perspective of her being a female. And she said that really hurt. But the way she looked at it, she spinned it because he wasn't trying to hurt her. He was just trying to help her grow in what she was trying to do. Because, most industries, it's harder for most women to continue climbing any kind of ladder. And even just more so because of gender. So she turned that around and understood what he was trying to do was prepare her for what she was going to embark on. So going back to the yard in itself is that as I'm going through it, am I ready to make that second pass on the yard on that line? Sometimes we kind of just give up because we see things that we missed and we're like, you know what, whatever, I'll come back to it at a later point. And that point may not happen again. It was an opportunity that we should have taken at that time. And so I want to pose this question for you. And man, I love it. It's simple, but it says, do you want to grow? And most of us will say yes. So this is the second question I will pose to that. So if you want to grow, are you willing to take the cuts? Are you willing to go through those cuts so that you can get to maturity, not perfection, but maturity? And I want to say we all want to, but we're not going to see those areas or those doors that we're going to have to go through in order to get to that place. Because, if you actually knew the path, would you actually take it? If you knew you had to go over this hill or go through this pothole or go through the mud or go through the rain, all sorts of weather, would you actually take it? And I believe that's how we truly grow, is that we say, you know what, this is honestly speaking, and I say this to myself a lot, I don't want to, but I know what I want is on the other side of that. So, and I'll say this from a spiritual perspective, is God, give me the courage and the boldness to do this. I don't know what is ahead, but I'm willing to do this as long as you go with me. I don't want to do anything outside of you. So as I end this real quick, I just want you to think about this. If you want to grow, are you willing to go through the cuts? Because cuts hurt. They're not meant to just be ornaments on life, but they're to be reflections, reminders. I have cuts on my body that remind me of things from my past when I was going through some hurtful situations. And let me say it this way: is that sometimes we put ourselves in situations that hurt us, that cut us. Sometimes it's from outside influences that do the same. But nonetheless, we have the option, we have the choice to say, I don't want to do that again. Or, you know what? If this comes back around, I'm more mentally, physically, spiritually prepared to go through this. Because I don't believe anybody wants to stay where they are. If I were to go back or take the time to reflect on where I was 5 years ago, I have to say, yes, I've grown. Have I grown as much as I want to? Probably not. Because I know I have gotten into myself to where I've just put things to the side. I haven't addressed certain things and it's kind of held me back. So in this season where I am and hopefully where you are, you're wanting to take that chance and grow. Find the mentors, find the leaders, find those that are willing to pour into you honestly, not just sugarcoat things. And that's what we also need, are those honest, hard conversations. And I'll say this to help you, hopefully, is that you have to say this to yourself in regards to the conversation, is that I need to be connected to someone that will tell me the honest truth. And it starts honestly with you speaking truth to yourself, so that when someone else speaks it, it doesn't hurt as much and you're able to receive it. This is all part of growth cutting you. But if you're ready to grow, you will. In the yard, you have to prune. And this is just a garden analogy for anybody that continues to be in the yard a lot, is that when you cut, you don't necessarily cut away so things will die. You cut away so things can grow just as well. For those that have nurtured bonsai trees, they take a lot of pruning, and they're one of the most beautiful trees you can ever see, but it takes years, dedication and commitment, nurturing for that. So the question is, do you want to grow? And if so, are you ready for the cuts?